Application programming interfaces, APIs, allow software to communicate and share data. But how can those APIs confirm the identity of the clients they're communicating with? API keys are one solution. API keys are unique codes for authenticating and authorizing access to the features, data, or resources offered up by an API. These keys allow builders and businesses to maintain control and monitor access over services and ensure security. In this post, we'll further explain what API keys are, what they're used for, the types of API keys, and how to generate an API key. API keys, short for Application Programming Interface Keys, are unique identifiers used to authenticate and control access to APIs, application programming interfaces. APIs are sets of rules and protocols that allow different software applications to communicate with each other. The API key authenticates the client making a request. It also provides authorization letting the API know if the requesting application is allowed to use the API and what it can access. Some common use cases for API keys include: security API keys can offer an extra layer of security for an API, better locking down data shared between API and client. Access control with API keys, developers can make sure only authorized users have access to data or resources provided by an API. Tracking and billing API keys can be useful in tracking and monitoring API usage. This information may be used for billing purposes or to keep tabs on, or enforce, rate limits. Integration API keys can be used to integrate services or software so they can more freely communicate. Overall, API keys play a part in software development by helping to ensure APIs are secure and used efficiently and responsibly. Access control, API keys also help enforce access control policies. They enable API providers to track and manage usage of their APIs by different clients, including limiting the number of requests each client can make within a certain time frame. Security, API keys play a crucial role in securing APIs by preventing unauthorized access. Only clients with valid API keys are allowed to interact with the API, reducing the risk of malicious attacks and unauthorized usage. Usage tracking, API keys provide a means for API providers to track usage metrics and monitor how their APIs are being utilized by different clients. This information can be used for billing purposes, performance monitoring, and optimizing API usage. Integration, API keys are typically included in API requests as part of the authentication process. Clients must include their API key in each request to the API, allowing the API provider to verify their identity and grant access to the requested resources. Key management, API keys need to be securely generated, stored, and managed by both the API provider and the client applications. Best practices for key management include encryption, rotating keys periodically, and revoking keys that have been compromised or are no longer needed. Overall, API keys are fundamental components of API security and access control mechanisms, enabling seamless and secure communication between different software applications across the web. Types of API keys. API keys can come in different formats, including alphanumeric strings, UUIDs, universally unique identifiers, or other cryptographic tokens. Some APIs use short-lived access tokens or JWTs, JSON web tokens, instead of traditional API keys for enhanced security and flexibility. Scope and permissions. API keys can be associated with specific scopes or permissions, allowing clients access only to certain functionalities or resources within the API. For example, an API key may have read-only access, write access, or access to specific endpoints within the API. Security best practices. API keys should be treated as sensitive information and protected from unauthorized access or exposure. It's crucial to avoid hard-coding API keys directly into client-side code or publicly accessible repositories, as this could lead to security vulnerabilities. Instead, API keys should be securely stored and managed, such as using environment variables, encrypted storage mechanisms, or specialized key management services. Rate limiting and throttling. API keys are often used in conjunction with rate limiting and throttling mechanisms to control the number of requests made by a client within a certain time period. Rate limiting